Edinburgh, Scotland, held a unique allure on Halloween. It was a city steeped in history, its ancient stones whispering tales of ghosts, murders, and restless spirits. But beneath the charming medieval streets and bustling Royal Mile lay a labyrinth of subterranean chambers known as the Edinburgh Vaults, notorious for their dark past. Once home to the city's poorest criminals, and now reportedly to its most malevolent entities, Dr. Alistair MacLeod, a cynical Scottish historian specializing in paranormal folklore, dismissed these claims as tourist traps, mere theatrics to draw crowds to the city's Halloween ghost tours. His mission this Halloween was to spend the night alone in the most haunted section of the vaults, meticulously documenting every creak and shadow to scientifically disprove the pervasive supernatural narratives. Alistair chose his location with meticulous care, the infamous Southbridge Vaults, a place rumored to be a hotspot for poltergeist activity and the lingering presence of dark, desperate souls. His equipment was state-of-the-art: thermal cameras, EMF detectors, audio recorders, and a high-resolution video camera mounted on a tripod. He believed that any paranormal activity could be explained by fluctuating temperatures, electromagnetic interference, or subtle auditory illusions amplified by the vault's oppressive acoustics. He arrived on the evening of October 31st, a biting wind whipping through his tartan scarf, carrying the distant strains of bagpipes from a street performer above. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, centuries of human misery, and an undeniable undercurrent of something acrid, almost metallic. As the tour groups departed and the last guide locked the heavy iron gate behind him, Alistair found himself plunged into an echoing, inky blackness, broken only by the cold beam of his headlamp. He set up his camp in a particularly dark chamber, famously known as the Vault of the Tormented, where numerous visitors claimed to have been touched, pushed, or whispered to by unseen forces. He placed a small carved pumpkin on his portable table, its flickering LED light casting dancing orange shadows, a defiant nod to the Halloween spirit, and a touch of ironic comfort. Hours passed in chilling silence. His EMF detector remained dormant. Thermal cameras registered only the natural dissipation of heat from the stone, and the audio recorders picked up nothing but his own breathing and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. Alistair felt a smug satisfaction. He began to narrate his findings into his video camera, detailing the lack of any significant anomalies. Just as expected, he mused, the power of suggestion, amplified by the human imagination, is far more potent than any actual spectral presence. But as the clock approached midnight, a subtle shift occurred. The temperature, which had been stable, began to drop sharply in a specific corner of the chamber, registering a plunge on his thermal camera. His EMF detector, previously silent, suddenly spiked erratically, its lights flashing red. Alistair's heart gave an involuntary lurch. "Interesting," he muttered, trying to maintain his scientific composure. But a prickle of unease started to crawl up his spine. Then, from the absolute darkness of the vaulted tunnel connecting to his chamber, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper reached his ears. It was a woman's voice, raspy and ancient, uttering a single chilling word: Pact. Alistair dismissed it as an auditory illusion, a trick of the acoustics. But the EMF detector flared again, even higher this time, and a cold gust of wind, smelling faintly of sulfur and something else, something sickly sweet and decaying, swept through the chamber, extinguishing the LED light in his pumpkin. The chamber plunged into complete darkness. He fumbled for his backup flashlight, his hands trembling slightly. When the beam cut through the gloom, it landed on a spot where, just moments before, there had been nothing. Now a faint shimmering outline of a woman stood. She wore rags that seemed to melt into the shadows, and her hair, long and matted, obscured most of her face. But her eyes, glowing with a malevolent orange light, were fixed on him. This was not a ghost. This was a revenant, a spirit bound by a powerful, unfulfilled purpose. And she was here, Alistair, despite his terror, found his academic curiosity overriding his fear. Who are you?" he stammered. The Revenant glided closer, her spectral form shimmering. Her voice, no longer a whisper, echoed with a hollow, ancient cadence. "I am Elspeth, bound to these stones. Bound by a pact, broken on Samhain." Elspeth pointed a skeletal finger at Alistair's chest. "You came here seeking answers, yet you deny the very truth that sustains me. Tonight, on the eve of Samhain, the pact demands renewal. A soul for a soul, a life for a legacy." Alistair remembered the Reverend Thorn's journals from Sleepy Hollow, the mention of ancient pagan rites on Samhain. Could Edinburgh have its own forgotten history, its own dark covenant? He pressed Elspeth. What pact? What legacy? Elspeth's form flickered, and a vision shimmered before Alistair's eyes. He saw 17th century Edinburgh, plague-ridden and desperate. A charismatic, ruthless cult leader, cloaked in black, promising salvation from the plague in exchange for eternal servitude. Elspeth, a young woman desperate to save her dying child, made a pact with him, offering her own soul and the legacy of her bloodline in exchange for her child's life and the cult's prosperity. But the leader, revealed to be a demonic entity, twisted the pact. Her child died anyway, and Elspeth was condemned to eternal torment, bound to the vaults. Her purpose to ensure the cult's legacy continued by finding new souls on Samhain. The cult, a shadowy organization known as the Black Hand of Auld Reekie, had continued its nefarious practices in secret, influencing events from the shadows, their power tied to the vaults. Their ritual required a pure soul on Samhain to maintain their connection to the underworld. The vision faded. Alistair gasped, reeling from the horrific revelation. "The Black Hand," he whispered, recognizing the cult's name from obscure historical texts he had once dismissed as sensationalist fiction. "They exist." Elspeth nodded, her glowing eyes burning brighter. "They thrive. They seek a new vessel, a strong mind, a discerning spirit. Your skepticism makes you a prime candidate, historian." The air grew heavy, thick with unseen presences. Alistair felt invisible hands pulling at his clothes, cold whispers brushing against his ears. The EMF detector screamed its lights a blinding red. He realized he wasn't just observing, he was the intended sacrifice. The glowing pumpkins around the vault seemed to mock him, their orange light now a sinister beacon for something far older than Halloween revelry. He tried to run, but the vaults seemed to extend endlessly, the passageways shifting and closing. The whispers of "Join us! Join us!" echoed from all directions, carried by spectral entities that brushed past him, leaving trails of icy cold. He stumbled back into his initial chamber, finding it surrounded by an ever-growing host of these phantoms, their eyes glowing with the same malevolent orange as Elspeth's. They were the trapped souls, the victims of the Black Hand. Now her enforcers. Elspeth materialized before him, closer than ever. Her skeletal hand reached for his chest, a chill seeping into his very bones. "The time has come, Alistair MacLeod. Fulfill the pact. Renew the legacy." But Alistair the historian had one final card. He remembered an old Gaelic charm, dismissed as superstition, that Sarah Jenkins had mentioned in passing during a conversation about warding off evil spirits. A simple rhyme meant to protect against the whispers of the fallen. It invoked the ancient standing stones of Scotland, older than any cult, older than any pact. He began to chant, his voice trembling but determined. "By stone and by earth, by ancient hearth and birth, return to dust, you unseen dread, the living walk. Leave the dead." As he recited the charm, the spectral entities recoiled, their forms flickering. Elspeth's glowing eyes dimmed, and her hand retreated. The charm was not to banish, but to disrupt, to momentarily sever the connection between the Revenant and the power that bound her. It was a gamble, but it bought him precious seconds. He remembered a detail from the cult's history. Their power was said to be weakest when exposed to the pure light of the true Samhain moon, uncorrupted by human artifice. He looked up at the ceiling of the vault. There was a barely visible crack, Leading upwards, Alistair grabbed his camera tripod, extended it, and with all his strength, jammed it into the crack, desperately trying to widen it. Elspeth roared, a sound of ancient fury, and lunged again. Her spectral claws raked across his arm, leaving behind an agonizing cold burn. The other phantom surged forward. "The moon!" he cried, remembering the charm. "The true moon!" He managed to dislodge a section of the stone ceiling, just enough for a thin shaft of pure moonlight to pierce the darkness, cutting through the thick, oppressive air of the vault. The moonlight, though faint, landed directly on Elspeth, her body convulsed. The orange glow in her eyes sputtered, then vanished. She let out a final, agonizing shriek, a sound of profound loss and release, as her form dissolved into a shower of white, shimmering dust that quickly vanished. The other phantoms, too, flickered and faded, the echoes of their whispers dying into silence. The vault returned to its chilling stillness, but the oppressive malevolence was gone. The EMF detector settled back to 0, and the temperature stabilized. Alistair collapsed, panting, the cold burn on his arm throbbing. He had done it. He had faced the impossible and survived. He had, in his own way, broken the pact. He looked at the shattered pumpkin on his table, its LED light now working again, casting a gentle, warm glow. The Halloween decorations, once symbols of his scientific defiance, now felt like a comfort, a reminder of the barrier between worlds. Emerging from the vaults at dawn, Alistair was a changed man. His cynicism was replaced by a profound respect for the unknown. He met Sarah Jenkins above ground, his arms still aching, but his mind clear. He recounted everything. Sarah, her face pale, believed him. Together, they decided to start a foundation dedicated to researching and protecting ancient Scottish sites, not just from historical degradation, but from the resurgence of forgotten evils, especially on Halloween. Alistair published his findings, but not in an academic journal. Instead, he wrote a book, The Revenant's Pact, My Halloween in the Edinburgh Vaults, detailing his terrifying experience, the cult of the Black Hand, and the true chilling nature of Samhain. It became a bestseller, sparking a renewed interest in Edinburgh's dark history, but also a deeper, more respectful approach to its folklore. And every Halloween, as the city prepared for its festivities, Alistair MacLeod would light a single orange pumpkin in his window, a silent vigil, a reminder that some legends are best honored, not challenged, lest the shadows stir once more.